Hello friends and welcome. Today we're going to do a quick PSA on Razer because he is cracked out of his mind right now. And you're probably going to see him a lot as everyone tries to capitalize on this absolutely broken build he's got right now. Which is true. It's an insane build as long as he gets it at a decent time. And I think it's really hard to deal with in pubs. So first of all, I would just tell you to ban this hero. If you're an offlane player, learn to play this hero. Want some replays, give it a go. But we are going to talk about how to play with Razers on your team and how to play against them. Just because he is going to slip through the cracks and you're going to have him in your games right now. Because he's got like a 57% win rate or something, and that is insane. Even the best heroes usually sit at like 55, so anything above that is kind of busted. So let's talk about the build so we kind of understand what we're up against. It is this change here from the patch, 25 more damage on the shard. Actually, I don't think this is what pushed him over to be broken. I mean, it definitely helps. But 25 damage is not like the end of the world. However, I think someone saw this and was like, okay, that sounds pretty good. How do we play with the shard? And that's how they discovered the new broken build, which is shard plus bloodstone, which this 25 damage does help with. But like, again, I think you could nerf it and this build would still be good. So it's just someone hadn't discovered it yet, which I've heard is 33, but I have no facts on that. So don't quote me on that. But the way this works, every time he is attacked, there's an 18% chance to proc, or every time a single target spell is used on him, it procs. And it hits 3 enemy heroes, or just targets in general. It can be creeps as well. I think it prioritizes heroes, though, if they're around. And there's no cooldown on this shit, which is the wild part. So, like, even as you, like, cycle through your spells, like, it just keeps going. So that makes it really hard to deal with in pubs, because if you think about the time you finish these items, Shard and Bloodstone, if you have them at a decent point, you're still doing a lot of damage with single target spells. So someone comes and tries to like blink stun you, boom, you already reflect damage back, and then everyone's trying to like pump in the damage while you're stunned. And even though you're stunned, you're still doing a lot of damage and healing from the passive spell lifesteal. And if he managed to actually activate his Bloodstone or any of his other spells, he's then even like doing it even more damage while he's sitting there stunned, right? So it's very hard to handle this in the like conventional way. You have to like have untargeted spells, which sometimes you just don't, right? Especially if you're like first phase picking and then Razer comes in the second phase and everyone's just randomly pick their stuff, right? It's not easy to guarantee you have the correct spells to deal with him. So that is a lot of the trouble with him. I think this 18% chance to reflect and the fact that it hits multiple units also makes like summons and illusions, which were something he didn't love to deal with before, because he likes to link just like a Sven, a sniper, like single target people, you know, and just run them down. Even illusion heroes, now they just start like proccing the passive like all the time. And if they don't hit hard enough, like PL illusions, like, yeah, you're kind of whittling them down, but I mean, I'm not even like, let's activate it now, you know, like he's now just healing every time he procs. And it's kind of wacky. So that's why this hero is really hard to deal with right now, in my opinion. And I would actually just tell you to ban him. Like, actually. It's hard to deal with in a pub game. So ban him. But if he does slip through the cracks, let's talk about how to play with him or play against him, depending on whose team he's on. So let's start with an example of being on your team. The new Razer is actually a bit of a farming hero for the first about 15 minutes. You really want to hit this build, because if you think about it, prior to this build, he wasn't really good, right? He was sitting at like sub 50. He was not a great hero. In the laning stage, because of the static link nerf, he's not as strong as he used to be. I mean, as you can see in this example, you can still get stuff done, but it's not required, I would say. Like, if he just wants to farm and, you know, play as aggressive as he needs to with static link to make that happen and to like kind of slow down the enemy, that's still fine. But you don't have to plan like, oh, we have to destroy the laning stage with Razer because, you know, that's what you pick Razer to do. It kind of is, but like not so much anymore either. Like, it's okay to go for this farming build a bit and let him scale up. And so if you see Razers in your game, don't get too tilted like my team did if they do stuff like this, where Razer used to be a very active hero in the past, and you would try to like go mid, for example. That's what my team was really tilted about. But this guy, he watched Speed's video, and he's like, okay, I'm just gonna use all my spells to farm. And I'd seen that video too, so I was like, okay, let's see how it works out. But if you're experiencing it for like your first time, don't be too surprised if you see Razers do this. Let them get to the Shard and Bloodstone, because it is a huge power spike for the hero. You'll see him do stuff like this, and hopefully they're doing it correctly like this Razer. You give him a good laning stage, and then he farms on the enemy's half of the map, so that if the PA comes to farm here, like, he will chase her out on her own. But in the meantime, if no one's dealing with him, you don't expect him to like come to the mid tower. Now, is that the best way to do it? Honestly, I don't know. This is still really new. Maybe he should still do that kind of stuff. But at least from what I've seen in my games, because I've seen a lot of Razer already at this point, like, this is some of what I'm seeing, and like, it works. So it's not the worst, okay? So don't get too upset if you see your Razers doing this kind of stuff, because once they get this combo, it becomes absurd. So at this point, Razer's already pretty ahead, but even heroes who get to this point can't usually, like, casually 1v4 and almost kill everyone. But Razer can with his new build. So 4 heroes tried to gank Razer and then had to run away from Razer. And now he's just going to kill the PA again. And what's crazy is that people try to help. Enchantress tried to help and killed PA. Because anything you throw on Razer, anytime you try to stun him to stop him chasing your teammates, anytime you slow him, if it's a single target spell, he's going to hit you for 175 damage. And it actually killed the carry in this case. So that's kind of what I'm saying. It's very hard to deal with. Active items also proc this, by the way, I forgot to say. So if you try to Yule's him, it'll active. If you try to like Atos him, it'll active. You have to like 4-staff your teammate, Glimmer your teammate, stuff like that. Because it can't be on the Razer, otherwise it's going to reflect damage, which, I mean, if you do it soon enough, maybe it's okay, but it's just an added struggle. Like, you're at the point where stunning could be wrong, and that's a very difficult spot to be in. And I mean, I'll just show you a couple more examples of like the potential of this build, and nothing that crazy happened, guys. I won the laning stage with Razer, right? We actually started off really badly. Razer died, and I had to TP home at the rune. So we started off really poorly, recovered. You could say there was some misplays from the enemy team, but I mean, it's pubs, right? That'll happen all the time. But if you manage to have a good game with Razer, all this guy did was farm for like 15 minutes. He didn't really contribute. It was tilting my team out, like I said. And then he finished these 2 items at around like a little after 15. I think, well, actually the first example was at like 18 minutes or something, I think. Like that was pretty early compared to like where it usually is. But once he's at that point, then he becomes super powerful. Because something I actually forgot to say, Bloodstone also returns mana. So he just runs around farming creeps, chasing heroes, constantly healing, constantly topping up his mana. And look at his spell cooldowns, right? All of them are fairly low. His ultimate, only 80 seconds at most, down to like 60 seconds. And then he's super fast. So that is when you get like online. And that's why he's now a bit of a farming hero in the first, like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes until he picks up this items, hopefully sooner than later. And once he has it, then you just start playing with him a ton. I know we're kind of cutting around, but I was just kind of like following Razer, throwing on heals, leech seeding around him, making him even harder to kill. While he does stuff like this, he's diving to tier 2, getting kills, and healing up. He's tanking everything, and he's gaining health. I mean, I'm part of that, but a lot of it is this Bloodstone. He does that, and then he's just ready to go. He's just gonna go like find PA again, kill her, farm what she was doing, and then guess what? It's like, well, I guess I'll just keep doing it. Let's start 2v4ing, like our Storm Spirit's gonna die here, and then it's just like me and him against the world. And again, I know he's like pretty ahead at this point, but usually you can't like 24/7 1v4, 1v5, dive tier 2s, dive tier 3s, no care, plop your ult, pop your Bloodstone, heal up, dive into the base, tier 4s, 5 heroes. Who even cares? Just run through, whatever. Again, I'm helping with the armor and stuff, but like, it's crazy. You couldn't do this with most other heroes, even those who have this kind of lead. So it's really busted. If he's on your team and he gets to this point, just help him out in this way, because like, the only way you throw this is if he starts feeding on his own, which is already difficult if he's on his own and this powerful, but just make it that much harder by playing with him and enabling him to not die and just constantly make space and run around and do whatever you want. And just kind of like one more example just to see how insane this build is, right? I mean, I'm contributing here too, I guess, right? But it's just us. Like 2 of our heroes are still farming. It doesn't matter. Like 2, 3 versus 5. It's fine. Dive their base. Run to their fountain, maybe turn around, I'm just healing the whole time, still full on mana, perfectly fine. continue to dive, pop all my spells. Who even cares? I'm Razer. I went Bloodstone Shard. Let me just stand outside their fountain. Look at this shit. This is why. Look at this. There's 4 heroes hitting him outside his fountain. He's gonna get 4 staffed in here, and he's still gonna heal. Look at this. He kills Bloodstone. He gets ulted. He's tanking everything. Now he finally dies. That is absurd. When the only way to kill Razer is for him to run into your fountain against like 4 or 5 heroes, buying back, doing extra damage to die, finally, that is absurd. That's busted. Again, I know he's super ahead, but it's crazy right now. So how do we deal with this? I think the best approach is to give Razer a poor lane. He's still not amazing due to the static link nerf, and as long as the matchup, like this is the hard part, right? This is where it's a little draft dependent. If the matchup's not too bad, then he's not gonna have a great time, and that's gonna make it harder to reach his item timing, the Bloodstone and the Shard. And the further those are delayed, I think the easier it becomes. It's when he gets them early enough and can just do literally whatever, it becomes so hard because he's gonna snowball so far. But if it's easier to deal with, then you kind of have some wiggle room there. So in this case, there's 2 heroes who has a hard time linking, right? Magnus support, which is a little weird, but he has Skewer to get away, Skewer to push Razer away from Morphling, even though Morphling has his own waveform. I actually don't think that's like fully the reason he lost. I think he just wasn't the best. I think that maybe they weren't used to the Magnus matchup as a support, but also they just made some mistakes. This isn't my lane, I'm in the other lane, but this happened in my game. The benefit to us is that many people are going to see these videos, and there's a lot of talk about how absolutely broken this build is, right? So a lot of people aren't actually Razer players. So beat them in the laning stage, because if you let them farm, it doesn't matter that they're not Razer players. It's very easy to press Bloodstone Q and just run at people. But if they have to like mechanically play their way through the laning stage and they're not good at Razer, this is where you can punish them. Anyone who has a natural way to get out of the link, by the way, I kind of hinted at it, but like Morphling Magnus, Snapfire is actually a great example. You can just cookie your ally to get away from the link. Anyone with stuns or slows, also good. He's not a speed car quite yet in the laning stage. You'll actually notice he's quite slow at 280. His armor's not insane, so anyone who can abuse this, I think Treant's actually pretty good, even though he's a little annoying with the link and the Q if he breaks your trees. But like, if you can, like I said, expect him to make some mistakes, because there's going to be many new Razer players trying this out. You can punish him pretty hard, I think, in the laning stage. Snapfire, I said, untargeted spells later in the game as well. Anyone who can break the link or help you get out of the link to make his lane miserable and slow down his tempo. Because like I said, once you hit it, I think it's very hard to deal with. So here you can see Razer's not doing as well as he did in our first example. He's nowhere near the Bloodstone. Well, I shouldn't say nowhere near, but he's not there. And if he doesn't have the build, he's just old Razer, and old Razer had a below 50% win rate. It's the new build that is really crazy. So as long as your team managed to have like a decent start, then it becomes a lot easier to deal with Razer, because he's just regular old Razer at that point. But if he does have a good game, other things we can think about, I think Spirit Vessel should now be like strongly considered, right? Because he's regenning like crazy, but the build doesn't really have a Dispel in it. So I think you could start Spirit Vessel, go for the urn, because a casual urn's not going to be that bad if Razer does a different build. But if Razer does a different build, like I said, those were at sub 50, so it's like, okay, it's fine, you know? But if you do see him starting to go for this build, which most people probably will now, then you can finish the Spirit Vessel, and I think it'll help a lot to reduce his healing, though it will probably zap you. Actually, I have to check that. I think Spirit Vessel is always unique. It doesn't proc targeted stuff, but I think, I don't know, we'll see. It might. Part of the issue, actually, something else I should say, a couple things like OD, and I think Enchantress is doing it as well. Like, some of the spell procs are from, like, attacks, which I think are bugged. I know OD is doing it. Enchantress might be as well. Those kind of attack modifiers. I'll go check after this. I'll pop up whether it is or not. But, yeah, like, regular Razer is not that hard to deal with. It is the new build who's super head. That's hard to do. Here's our support Magnus killing him, right? So this is what you want. Pick strong laners who can try to beat Razer in the lane, make him have a bad start, and then possibly buy Spirit Vessel. You could try picking AA, right, for the ult, but I don't think you're the best laner, so you're kind of risking him having a good start, but you're just going to try to, like, ult him and kill the build. Untargeted damage, kind of like Snapfire, so even when he finished that build, if you can just, like, ult him, that might be one way to deal with it. I think, like, pipes could be useful. to kind of like mitigate some of the AoE damage he's dealing. Yeah, that's kind of what I got. That's my like theories. My best approach has been trying to beat him in the laning stage in some of my games. Or at least that's what I've noticed. Like when he has a poor laning stage, he just doesn't feel really that scary. He just feels like old Razer. But anytime I've seen a Razer have a good lane, it's absurd. It's so crazy what they can do, just running around 24/7. So that's what I've got right now. Let me know what's working for you all. We do have the benefit that many Razer players are still bad, but I think the longer this build stays, more people are going to learn how to do it, and I think it's going to be hard to deal with. So probably just start banning it. But in the same way this build was undiscovered, maybe there's a super strong counter that just hasn't been discovered yet either. So if any of you have any ideas, let me know. Please leave comments. And that's it. Keep an eye out for the future video where I'll start talking about some of the supports I think are good. I just want to test out a couple more before we make some of that first impression stuff. I don't want to lead you guys astray, but expect that hopefully later this week. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.